Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Now in this video, we're going to be doing a couple of things. I'm going to be putting fresh money into a new position. I'm going to show you my long-term complete yield farming strategy for profit by the time we turn the corner with the market, because I personally believe right now this market, of course, I'm not a technical analysis expert. I don't know where the market's going. No one does. But I believe that we're either going to be pretty choppy sideways or we have some more room to go down before we start to go back up with everything that's going on right now, both in the market and in the world in general. And also the 200-week SME is currently sat around $58,000. So this is a fairly important metric for me anyway when looking at long-term yield farming pools and protocols, because this really allows me to determine, okay, what am I going to do with this part of the strategy, which I'll explain later on in the video. So I do potentially think that we're going to have some more room on the downside. I'm not saying we could go back up to the 80, 90, 100K range before we come back down, but I do think we do have some more room to come down before we have new highs. Of course, again, not a technical analysis expert, don't claim to be, not a financial advisor. But yeah, this is a part of my strategy and I'll explain why in a bit. So if we go over to VFAT here, you can see I have 4 positions now. I think just a quick update, we have $63 in earned rewards, which I am going to claim. I still have my $200 or so that I have claimed, that's currently just sat in my wallet. So I'm going to add this to the stack and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with these positions out of range. So you can see here, the 2 positions that are in range is a USDC to WETH position over on the Monad chain. And that's currently in position, that's between 1,500 and 2,400. And then we have a USDC and Bitcoin position between $52,000 and $86,000. Now the APR obviously on the USDC to Bitcoin position is pretty low, but I am on a pretty wide range, minus 25% on either side. So between 52K and 86K. And it still gets a couple of percent a month. You know, I've seen this anywhere from 50% all the way down to 12%. So it really just depends on volume. So what am I going to do with these 2 positions up here? I have a USDC to Bitcoin position on PancakeSwap on base, which is out of range. This was a fairly tight range here. This was 11.8% between 63K and 71K. Obviously, we're above that now. And then I had this ETH position, which again was between 1,800 and 2K. So these 2 positions are obviously in profit because they've come out of range on the upper side. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to take this $1,600 from this WETH USDC position. And by the way, I don't recommend this. Like, for example, if you have slightly tighter ranges or you have a range and this little pump here that we've had this week, if you're out of range, I don't necessarily recommend taking it out and creating a new pool just yet. That's completely up to you, but this is my strategy because going forward, I have around 30 to 40K sat on the sidelines ready to pump into these positions. And I'm just kind of testing this now with 6K for a long-term strategy, essentially. So I'm just doing this to position myself for when I bring that money in. I'll explain what I'm going to do with that in a second, but I'm just essentially positioning myself for that. So yes, we have $1,600 here, and I am going to take this and create a wider range with it. Yes, the APR will be a lot lower, but I mean, still 6% a month, 70% APR. I'll take it. Right, I will take it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to harvest my fees first, actually. So let's go ahead and harvest our fees here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to harvest this in USDC. Okay, just to add to our stack. So you can see we had $230 that I claimed in rewards. And now I'm just going to go ahead and harvest this position here. So we're going to switch to base and our Rabby wallet is going to give us that confirmation. So you can see the sort of route that this will go through is going to claim the PancakeSwap, swap it to USDC and etc. Right? So we're going to go ahead and sign this transaction. And that should give us our USDC added into there. So that will take around $33 off of our earned balance. Okay, now this USDC to Bitcoin position, I'm going to leave this for now, just to see if we do come back into this range, because I'm okay with having this Bitcoin and USDC position there. But yeah, the main thing is for us to take this money and put it into a wider position. So let's give VFAT a refresh, and I am going to just double check that everything is claimed. Yep, so we've harvested those fees. Now I'm going to withdraw my ETH. Okay, I am going to take it to Ethereum. But before I do that, I am going to, in fact, I'm going to take it to USDC just because I need the USDC to jump into this new position. So we're going to claim we're going to claim this essentially. So let's copy that because I don't really want that adding to my stack. So let's exit this position into USDC. And we're going to go ahead and sign this and confirm the transaction. And then transaction successful. Boom. Now I could have gone ahead and rebalanced this and done a wider position here, but I don't think the APR is as good on PancakeSwap at the moment. Okay, well, 71% because of volume. But when I did check this the other day, the APR here on this specific position at a higher, a more of a wider range wasn't as good. Now, I know that they are pretty solid on the Monad chain because I've been in this position here, which has around 1.1 million in TVL for a while. So I know that this has been pretty solid, at least over the past week. So yeah, let's go ahead and figure this out. I'm going to go ahead and find a position. So if we go ahead and search, let's say I want to do ETH to USDC. And I'm actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just remove this. I'm going to just do average. We want to find one with a decent, with a good TVL, at least, roughly 500k is an absolute minimum, but a million is pretty good. So I'm just going to search for APR. So if we scroll down here and have a look to see what is going on, you can see there are a bunch of different positions. Now, I am personally going to stick with my USDC and WETH position on Monad, just because I know it is solid. I mean, even if you wanted to do a 90% range right now, you've got a 38% APR, so pretty good. But I do need to bridge that money over to the Monad chain, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So for bridging, I use dbridge. And yeah, I use dbridge here. So I have USDC on base, right? And I want to go ahead and put that on USDC on Monad. And then you just put the amount in. I think it was 1594. And I'm going to go ahead and get 1592. There's a little bit of slippage, whatever. But as soon as I do this, it's going to take 1 second. So let's go ahead and confirm this and bridge that over to the Monad chain. Also, you're going to get some points per swap just because of the airdrop as well. But again, we don't really, it's not something that I just use dbridge because of how easy and quick it is. So we now have that $1,600 over on the Monad chain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for this. I'm not just going to go ahead and increase this position. Okay, this position was set up around here, something like that, but minus 25 plus 25. And I don't really want to, this is in profit, right? I do not want to add this funds here because it will just, it's just for easier. I'm going to set up a new one essentially. So let's click the pool that I want to jump in. Now this is where you select the range. I could do something like 25-25, which I probably am. ETH's gone up a bit, so it means that we will be out of range on a sort of lower price Ethereum, but I'm okay with that, to be honest, because we have a higher side as well. This is between 1,700 and 3K. You can go as wide or as narrow as you want. Obviously, the only difference is going to be the APR. So here, if we did 60%, we're going to be getting 56% APR. Okay, if we were going to do 55%, for example, 55%, 60% APR. I'm going to stick with 25 and 25. I like my 50% ranges. Feels like a good solid number. And we're going to go ahead and go to USDC. And we're going to put this full amount in. Okay, that range is going to be between 1,700 and 2,700. And let's go ahead and deposit this 1.6K here. So again, Monad is extremely cheap, by the way. I do like the Monad chain just because of like most L1s, L2s are cheap. Monad is like the cheapest I think I've ever seen. Um, so, and it's pretty quick as well. Like you'll see that has, I've just approved that and that was instant. Again, same thing. This is going to be pretty instant as well. Transaction successful within a second. So I like the Monad chain. Okay, so if we give this a refresh, we should start to see our position in here now. So here we go. This new pool. So this has got us an additional $2.91 per day. Now, yes, we are only making $6.50 per day right now with a 37% APR, but you have to remember this Bitcoin pool is pretty low in terms of the APR, and also my other Bitcoin position up here is out of range. So do keep that in mind. If you are going to do Bitcoin positions are typically going to be lower APR anyway, just because of the nature of it. And also another thing to mention is when you have sort of crazy high APRs, you do just want to sort of be careful of the range. Because if you have a sort of, stupidly sort of high APR, again, the range is going to be super, super tight. And also, you don't really want to, you're going to be out of range pretty quickly, right? So larger ranges for me are sort of better. Now, also, by the way, you can actually go ahead and have a look in pools as well. You don't have to just stick to the farms. You can take a look at the pools. Again, pools are going to probably be slightly lower APRs, but there may be some that have higher APRs. You know, like some of them, like for example, this one here has tiny TVL though, so I wouldn't jump into that. But yeah, but going back again, there's one here on, there's a couple here on Arbitrum that have pretty decent APRs for a fairly decent range as well. So you don't just have to jump into the bigger pools, or the ones that I'm doing, etc. You can pretty much jump into any of these, and obviously select the range that you're happy with. I like wider ranges. I don't typically, now going forward, I won't do anything less than 30%, just because otherwise you're checking it every single day. And for the strategy that I'm going to explain in a second, I don't want to do that. Okay, so yeah, 50% ranges I'm happy with, pretty good. What I'm going to probably do is take out these Bitcoin pools, because again, this is for cash flow. I am probably going to get rid of this. What is this? 4,000, 3.5K, something like that. One of them's out of range, one of them is really low APR. So that's why my APR states that it is extremely low when we're sort of all in on sort of 60-ish%, 50-60% ranges. We're gonna be we're gonna be pretty good there. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I'm not going to do that in this video though. Now I'm going to explain the strategy for the long term. So this is where we use Aave. Okay. Now you've seen me explain this before a while ago. I did a little test, but when I'm sort of ready, and this is why I'm looking at things like the 200-week SME, etc., is because I do want to go ahead, deposit my Bitcoin, okay, my long-term holding Bitcoin, which sat on a cold wallet, into Base, Morpho, something like this, where I can lend out or I can supply my Bitcoin, okay, and I can use that as collateral to borrow against. Now, I can do a test here with this USDC, but essentially all it is you supply the coins, okay? In fact, let's do it now just so that you can see the you can see the strategy here. So you just pretend this is Bitcoin. I haven't started doing this yet, but just pretend it is. Okay, so you supply your Bitcoin on something like Aave or Aave, Morpho, a lending platform. Okay, again, pretend this is Bitcoin here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to supply this Bitcoin. Okay, we're going to sign the transactions here and get that on the Aave platform. And then now I've got my Bitcoin on the platform. Okay, it will come up here saying that I have supplied my BTC here. I can now take a collateralized loan against that. So again, this is $200 worth of Bitcoin, right? I can now go ahead and borrow USDC against my Bitcoin. Now I'm only going to borrow between 30 to 40%. If you want to be extremely conservative, 20 to 30%. So let's pretend this is, for easy math's sake, $10,000 worth of Bitcoin in here. I can now borrow conservatively $2,000, or more sort of aggressively, I guess. You can do $3,000 to $4,000 borrowing against that. And now what I can do is I have this USDC in my wallet that I can go and open up a new position with. And then what you can do with your $200 monthly income with that is, again, this is just an example. I can then go ahead and buy some more Bitcoin, okay, with the cash flow coming in. So I'm increasing my amount of Bitcoin that I hold, resupply that on Aave, and I can either borrow more USDC against that, or my health factor just goes up. So essentially, you're safer with the loan. Essentially, this is the game that they obviously play in real estate. But now we're just sort of taking those same principles and putting it into DeFi. With a lot less capital and a lot more liquidity, right? Not a lot more liquidity, but it's more liquid, should I say. So that is really the strategy. Now, you may say, what about the loan? You got to pay that back. Well, if you're consistently buying Bitcoin with your rewards and you're increasing your collateral, or you're increasing your supplied amount of Bitcoin, your health factor is always going to go up because you're consistently increasing the amount that your collateral. So, the percentage that you've borrowed initially will decrease over time as you buy more Bitcoin that you've supplied, if that makes sense. So you can borrow back, you can sort of repay the debt, but it's not necessary, right? If you've got a good enough health factor and you're continually buying Bitcoin with the amount of, with the fees that you're getting every day, and you're increasing your collateral amount. So that is the strategy. And then with this, the pools that I'm going to open are going to be ETH and USDC pools. I found over my time of yield farming, like I've been in DeFi for 7 years, 2019 in total. Yield farming for around 6 years. I first started when PancakeSwap first came out, right? A lot of you know my original story, but I first started when PancakeSwap ever came out and I was staking cake. So that is yield farming. So I've been in DeFi for a long, long time. And I've seen a lot of pools, I've seen a lot of farms, I've seen a lot of stuff. And long term, I have seen ETH and USDC with wider ranges, 30% as a minimum range, but 50, 60, 70, 80% ranges are the ones that provide a consistently decent enough APR to where you can really start to catapult your amount of cash flow and also the amount of Bitcoin that you hold. Because we're depositing Bitcoin in Aave and borrowing USDC against our Bitcoin, the reason I only do Bitcoin is because it's more stable than something like Ethereum or altcoins. You can still borrow and use those altcoins as collateral, but Bitcoin is going to be the safest. And always, I just want more Bitcoin long term, right? So if you can supply your Bitcoin, instead of selling that and putting it into pools, the USD value, you've now still holding your Bitcoin fully in your custody on Aave, but you're now just taking a loan against that and you using that to put into pools to generate cash flow to buy more Bitcoin to do the same thing. So that's obviously called the flywheel strategy. So that is my thing long term. And the reason why I'm sort of testing these higher range pools and testing different things is so for when I am ready to put my Bitcoin on Aave and basically borrow against it and do that strategy, I am going to be, safe in doing that because I've got the pools. I'm happy with the pools that this money's in. So I will just set up new pools or increase my positions on these, and they're going to be in range for a while. So that is my strategy. That is my goal. Let me know down below what you think. Apologies, this was a longer video. I just wanted to show you the overall strategy so that you can get an idea of what I am planning to do. So let me know what you think. And with that being said, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.